Hi friends, this is Caitlin and welcome back for day 10 of my October Eve series. I'm posting a new Halloween or fall themed project every day leading up to October 1st, and we are finally in the home stretch. Today I'm sharing this card featuring these super sweet images from Paperie Ink and this beautiful pull-apart background stamp from Simon Says Stamp that came out with their part of their Stamptember release. I started out by prepping some kraft cardstock with my anti-static powder tool and then stamped this one section of the pull-apart stamp just on the left side of my card. At every single step of this card I had the thought that if I just stopped there it would be really pretty. I think the watermark tone-on-tone look of this is really subtle but beautiful, and I really wanted to try out the white embossing powder, but I'm gonna have to keep this in mind for another project later on. When I heat emboss, I always stamp my image 2 or 3 times to make sure that I get a clear impression. And I always pour on my embossing powder over a piece of printer paper so that it's easier to clean up and put back in the jar when I'm done. At first I wasn't sure how to add my sentiment, and I was considering using an oxide ink to stamp it in a coordinating color or adding it on afterwards with a paper strip. Sometimes figuring out the placement for sentiments really throws me off, but I decided that with the ink blending that I was planning, that it would be best to white heat emboss the sentiment as well, just to help keep the continuity throughout the card. The first time I stamped the sentiment and heated it, it looked a little patchy, and I didn't think that going over it with a white gel pen would be enough to smooth it out. Because I had left my stamp in its spot in the MISTI, I was able to add a second layer of ink and powder and heat it again, and it came out really great the second time. It's a little more bold, but it's definitely more legible than it was before. After talking about how nice blending was with one oxide ink, I decided to use a rewards voucher that I had from Michael's craft store to treat myself to 2 new colors for my collection, and I made sure that they would work well with the carved pumpkin I already owned, just so I could make this card and get this color blend. I used my Simon Says Stamp small blending brushes to blend on some mustard seed ink in the top left corner and let it fade away as it moved to the right. To help the edge blend without a clear stopping point, I held the brush further back on the handle and worked in small circles. This will help to remove the pressure from the bristles so that they just get the smallest amount of ink transferring. Then I went in with the carved pumpkin ink in the middle section, overlapping it with the mustard seed and fading it off to the right as well. I went over all of the areas with the leaves a little bit extra so that the color would really read through the embossing and they wouldn't get lost. I added in Seedless preserves at the bottom and carried it over a little extra to the right to help that sentiment feel like it was meant to be there and like everything was incorporated together. I made sure to overlap the carved pumpkin and the Seedless preserves because I've seen that they make a beautiful color, and I was not disappointed. The most exciting part of this whole process was going in with my stamp chamois, which I had prepped before I started so that it wouldn't be too wet, and wiping over all of the embossed lines to see that white pop back out. I've tried to go in with a dry paper towel before because I've seen that work for other people, but it never gets all of the ink off for me. This method though has been working really well as long as I make sure that my stamp chamois is not too wet so that it activates that ink. I really love these little squirrels from the Paperie Ink stamp set called A Little Nutty, and I thought they would be a perfect fit for this fall leafy background. I kept the coloring on these guys pretty simple, working with just one color family for both of them and keeping the light source pretty central. All of the colors I'm using, as well as any of the other supplies I used today, will be listed in the description box below for you, and when I can, I'll always add some links. I did decide to go in and add a little extra spiral to their tails just because I think this is a really cute look and an easy way to add a little extra character to them, but you can always just stick with the artist drawn lines. They're adorable just the way they are too. I think it's really fun to change things up sometimes because it's so easy for us to get stuck in a rut when it comes to crafting. Anytime I feel like I've been doing a couple intense scene cards in a row, I like to think of a way to use some of my cute critters besides putting them into another scene. So something like this where they can just be popped on top is so much fun. And it would really be a nice way to make a set of cards where you could have different characters on each one but the same kind of background used for them all. It would also be a great way to give a gift of a card set, I think. I'm very curious, do you guys ever make cards to gift to other people for them to send out? I feel like we all know someone who's really good about sending out cards, even if we aren't great at it. My best friend is really amazing at sending cards and making thank you gifts or these really lovely like birthday gift baskets. And I love giving her extra cards just because I know how much she enjoys it and I know how great they're gonna look with whatever she's presenting them with. I've also tried listing some of my cards over on Etsy, but the amount of time it takes to post versus how long they sit there just doesn't seem like a great use of my time. So leave me a comment below and tell me what you're doing with everything you're making. Do you send them out? Do you gift them, swap them, sell them? I'd love to hear from you and know how everybody's making it work. Or are you like me and you also have boxes of cards sitting in a corner somewhere? I don't know about you guys, but doing this many videos, I'm starting to feel like I'm running out of things to ask you. I'm sure more things will come to mind as we keep going. I really want to get to know you and I hope you enjoy getting to know me. It's been an interesting balance trying to figure out how much personal to add to these versus keeping it all about the crafting, and I hope I'm doing a good job finding the balance. I really love these images from Paperie Ink, and I think they have so much expression to them that they really add a lot of character to the card. I also love all of the items I used on this card today because just by changing up the colors, this could easily become a summer or any time of year card with some pretty yellows and greens. I decided to use some warmer browns for the acorns. After I had laid out my base shading to the tops, I gave them a minute to dry and then went back in to add in some cross-hatching lines to create more texture for the tops of them. I only had a little itty bitty leaf here to color, but I wanted to try to get it to match the yellows in the background, so I added in some YR24 and YR21 for that more mustard kind of color. Then I went in with my white gel pen to add highlights to the eyes and the noses of these sweet little squirrels. I think they just turned out so stinking cute. Paperie Ink doesn't have coordinating dies for their stamped images, but as I've said before, most of their images are so easy to cut out, the lines are really smooth and simple, and normally I cut straight against the stamped image, but this time I decided because of that white embossing that leaving a little bit of a white border would be okay. Because the sentiment and everything else is so flat on this card, I decided to pop up the squirrels with some foam tape. I added it to each of the images on the back, but I didn't take off my tape backing until I was sure of where I wanted the placement to be. I added in a little bit of shadow under each of the areas I wanted my squirrels to go with warm grays and then blended them out. This just helps to make it look like they aren't floating in space, even if it's not super realistic with the giant leaves all around them. I found that getting the shading done before I stick down my images really helps so I have room to maneuver. You wouldn't think that them being there would be that much of a pain since it's just going under them, but I promise anytime I've tried to skip it and done the shadow after they were glued down, I regretted it. Once I had them both attached to this card panel, I trimmed down my edges, making it 5 1/4 by 4 inches and adding it to an A2 size panel of this really fun wood grain pattern paper. I am so in love with the ink blending on this card and how great the oxides work on kraft cardstock. I cannot wait to play with this background stamp some more, and I have a feeling this is going to be a year-round favorite for me. I cannot believe we are already at day 10 of the series. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a lot more work than I anticipated, but I'm so happy with how everything has turned out so far. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying October Eve. I really appreciate you hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great day and happy crafting.